Okay, so now f3 by Firouzja. He's preparing to push e4. And guys, here we have the Nimzo-Indian Defense. And this complete setup is known as Moch variation. And after that, here Ivan strikes with c5. He just targets the d4 pawn. But Firouzja just advances his d pawn further. d6, e4, and finally Ivan castled. And after that, knight to e2. And here Ivan strikes with b5, attacking the pawn on c4. So to defend this, Firouzja brings his knight to f4, defending the c4 pawn as well as putting some pressure over the e6 pawn. And now black can consider pushing the h-pawn, but instead he decides to slide his king to h8, getting away from any further threats as well as preparing to reroute this knight from g8 to e7. Okay, so now knight to g8. Preparing for knight to e7 as well as you can see f5 is coming. And finally Firouzja also castled. Okay, so now Ivan targets the bishop with knight to g6. So to defend this, here Firouzja goes for queen to f3. But guys, that's a mistake. Instead, queen to c1 might be the best option, which first of all guards this bishop on a4 as well as keeps an eye on this knight on c3. Because at any time black can capture this, making this b pawn isolated. But before that, Ivan develops his another knight on d7. He just wants to place this monster knight on e5 so that he can target this queen. Okay, so knight at c goes to e2. He basically moves his knight away, and after that knight at d goes to e5. He just now he's attacking the queen. So queen to b3, and after that a5. And you can see now black is threatening multiple threats like pushing this a pawn further, which attacks this queen, as well as he is also going to capture this active bishop. Okay, so now Firouzja goes for knight to f5, looking to create some kingside magic and eyeing the e7 square. And guys, now it's better to capture this bishop with knight takes c4, because after queen takes c4, now comes a3, attacking the pawn on b2 as well as trying to open the a file. And let's say if black just I mean if white just pushes his pawn further, now comes bishop to a6, attacking the queen as well as the knight. So obviously queen to c2 is forced, but now comes c4, a discovered check. And now knight to d4 might be the best option, but let's say if instead white decides to slide his king to h1, that will be a big mistake, because first of all black is going to capture the pawn on b3, and obviously white cannot recapture with the queen due to this undefended knight. So that's why a takes b3 is forced. But as you can see, now this a file is opened. So first of all, rook at f goes to c8, attacking the queen, and after this queen goes to a2, bishop takes e2, queen takes e2, and finally a2. And just look at this position. Black's a pawn is a total monster and the rooks are ready to invade, which clearly shows that black was completely winning. Okay, so in the actual game, after knight to f2, after knight to f5, here Ivan decides to capture this knight with bishop takes f5, and which is an inaccuracy because he missed this amazing continuation. And Firouzja recaptures with the e-pawn, and you can see now f6 is coming, which is going to weaken the kingside structure. And finally, Firouzja pushes f6, a brilliant pawn wedge, locking the black king and creating some serious weaknesses. And here it's better for Ivan to push g5 so that he can attack this rook, but instead he pushes g6. And basically now taking advantage of this, here Alireza goes for queen to c1. And in the next move, he's preparing to swing the rook to h4 with the idea of queen to c6 to deliver a brutal checkmate. So after seeing this, Ivan brings his queen to d8. And after that, knight to g3, preparing to improve his knight. And guys, here Firouzja brings his rook to f3, which is a special move. I mean, there is a very nasty intention behind this. I mean, let's see. So basically, let's suppose if black is not careful and he goes for any move like, let's say, queen to b8. In this position, now white can go for this crazy move, which is knight to e4. And the idea is, if rook takes e4, and basically the idea is to deflect this rook, because now comes queen to h6, threatening mate on g7. And I know most of you be like, bro, just rook to g8, but what about rook to h3? And you can see now no one can stop this mate. So that's why after rook to f3, here first of all Ivan's goes for rook to g8, basically just covering the g7 square so that this queen can't enter. And guys, so after king to h2, here Ivan makes an inaccuracy by pushing g5, which allows knight to f5. and you can see what's coming next. But Ivan just pushes g4, he just targets the rook, so that's why rook to g3, rook to g6, and the idea is to bring this rook to h6 if this knight moves. Knight to e7, attacking the rook, and let's say if black defends it on, let's say, rook to h6, now that will be a mistake because of rook takes g4, and you can see now rook to g8 check is coming. So to stop this, rook to g6 is forced, but knight takes g6 check, h takes g6, and finally rook at f goes to f4. And you can see white attacks is just completely unstoppable. So that's why after knight to e7, here Ivan is forced and he sacrifices or the exchange by rook takes f6. Rook takes f6. And in this position, the final move by Firouzja is king to h3, and here Ivan Saric resigned. This is because, let's say if this game continues like rook takes c4, now comes rook takes a3, attacking the bishop, and let's say if bishop to b6, and guys, in this position now white can play a crazy move. Can you guess the move? Just pause the video and try to find it by yourself. And if you find the move rook to a7, then congrats, you are a genius. Because the idea is to deflect the bishop so that white can promote. Absolutely brilliant game by Firouzja. Like this video and I will see you in the next one. This is your host Bison signing off. Bye bye.